So let's now extend our automation workflow and add a comment into this. So now, in addition to creating an issue, we'll do add comment, which again is part of the API set here that you can investigate. So if I drop this into here, it'll drop it right into the workflow. And now if I double click it, you'll see that these are the variables that need to be set. Now we've got something new here. We've got the request body payload. We've got the body content type. We've got something called expand, which we're not going to be using here. This has to do with rendering in HTML. But we have something here called issue ID or key that's a requirement, and it's a string. Now, this totally makes sense because if I'm adding a comment, I need to add a comment to a particular issue. Otherwise, what are we adding the comment to? So in this case, I need to extract the issue ID, or it's asking for a key here, from this create and add it. And so make that available as a variable to use here in this comment. So I can't go directly from here to here. I have to have a transition step which extracts that data from the create issue API call and makes it available to the add comment call. So then we can append a comment to a previously created issue. And so that's what we'll do now. So we can do that. There's a variety of ways to do that. But one of the simplest ways, especially for something like this, is to use a query in our platform. So this is another task that's built into the system under Workflow Engine. So if I drop this onto here, it's going to attach that to our workflow. And now if I double click query, it's going to ask us for a couple of variables here. It's going to ask us for a query, and this is a JSON query. So everything we do in the platform is represented, all data is represented as JSON, as a JSON object, because it makes it very, very easy to extract data, manipulate data. It's really easy for a human to read as well, but it's really easy to extract data, manipulate data for machines, programs, automations, things like that. So everything is going to be represented and passed as JSON objects, and we have webinars that go through the basics of JSON objects if you need a refresher on that or if you want to understand those more. But we try to simplify it as much as possible. But in this case, we just need to query. We need a string to query for. And I'm going to show you what that looks like, what we're going to put into here. And then we need to know the object, the JSON object that contains the data that we're going to try to extract. So the query allows us to extract this key that's going to be part of the output of this API call so that it can be used as the input, or at least one variable of input into the add comment call. We'll learn a little bit later. We can use transformations for this and much, much, much more, especially when we have multiple steps for manipulating data into different formats. But for this, query works really, really well. So how do we get this? How do we get started? So first, we know create issue requires, add comment. So if I double click that, needs an issue or key. So we need to identify where that comes from as the output of the create issue. So if I go back into our operations manager, and this is the completed job, right? So if I double click on that, we get to see the variables that were incoming and outgoing. So we looked at that for a moment. Now let's take a closer look at this. So what we really want to do is we want to find where this new key is passed back to us, or this ID. And in this case, it's represented in several places, but I'm going to extract it from this section right here, object obj. So, and then ID holds this new key. So this create issue, when it creates, it's going to pass back to our workflow this data. And if we could extract obj, and then under obj, it's kind of a hierarchy. They have got a field called ID, or a key called ID. If we can extract that information, then we'll have exactly what we need to pass to the add comment task call. And that's exactly what the query is going to do. So if I double click here, the query is simply obj.id. I'm sorry, is it ID or key? Let's double check. Let's use key. Either should be fine. We'll use obj key. And now we're back to our object here. So where's that data coming from? So now the object of this query is, okay, you've told me the key to look for. Where is the object? Where is the data set? And we're going to reference the data that gets returned from this particular task. So we can define it to look at a task. It's going to say the previous task is create issue. And the variable that holds all of that data that we just looked at in Operations Manager is held in this variable called response. So we're referencing that. So it's going to say, okay, grab the output from this and then query for this object.key. And then when we find that, we make that available so that the add comment can now use it. So now with add comment, we can reference this query task and extract that key. Well, reference the key that was extracted. So if I hit task, by default, it defaults to the last task. And that task is going to hold return data, which should hold that key because that we've just defined that query to hold that information. And then finally, we have a body request payload. So again, this comes from the documentation. It can get a lot more complex than this, but I will paste in very basics that you need. And all we need really is the body to hold the string that we want to add as a comment. In this case, added this comment to this issue. So now if I close that, save it. All right, now we should be able to run this and take a look at it again. So if I run this, it's going to open up another instance. You'll notice here, it created the issue. We did the query task step, so that should have extracted that key, and then we added the comment. So if we go to our board, all right, here's the latest one, IT62. So if I double click that, you'll see all the things that we initially set up when we created the issue, and now we've added the comment to the issue. So this was that second task that we added.